This video is for educational purposes only. Everything you're about to hear is sourced from publicly available material, such as internet articles, books, and documentaries. Hello friends, and welcome. A single face took the internet by storm overnight. But when people found out the horrifying truth behind that beautiful face, that she was a murderer, they were left in shock. This happened back in November 2020. A girl suddenly started going viral on TikTok. Now, this didn't happen in India because TikTok was banned there in June 2020. But outside of India, the entire world was watching this girl's videos go viral. In those videos, the girl is seen wearing prison clothes. Her hands are cuffed, her ankles shackled. She walks into a courtroom and occasionally looks into the camera, sometimes smiling, sometimes making bizarre faces. TikTok users began making duets with the video. Some edited it with dramatic background music. And before anyone knew it, this mysterious girl had taken over the internet. People became obsessed with her looks. Fan pages were created in her name. And all this attention came for one reason, because she was attractive and looked innocent. But now the question is, who is this girl? And what crime did she commit? The girl I'm talking about is Isabella Gluzman, who lived in Aurora, Colorado at 2624 South Lima Street, with her mother Yunhee Hoy and stepfather Ryan Huey. Her path to the courtroom began on Tuesday, August 27, 2013. At the time, Isabella was 18 years old. It was a normal evening. She had just returned home after finishing work at her studio. As she neared home, her stepfather noticed a teenage boy jumping out of Isabella's bedroom window and running off through the backyard, leaping over the metal fence. That's when he remembered what the neighbors had told them before, that when Isabella was home alone, she often brought different boys over. The boys would flee the moment they heard someone arriving, often escaping through the window. Until that moment, they had dismissed the neighbors' warnings. But seeing it with their own eyes changed everything. That evening, Isabella's mother, Yunhee, was shocked and angry. She went straight to Isabella's room with her husband, Ryan, and confronted her about the boys. Instead of responding calmly, Isabella grew hostile. She refused to answer their questions, and when her mother tried to reason with her, Isabella lashed out. She began yelling, insulting her, and eventually spat in her mother's face before storming off. Yunhee Hoy, Isabella's mother, was deeply shaken by her daughter's behavior. That night, she was so frightened by Isabella's aggression that she didn't feel safe sleeping alone in her own bedroom. Normally, Yunhee slept by herself, but that night she locked her bedroom door from the inside and stayed with her husband, Ryan Huey. Before we move ahead to the events of the following day, it's important to understand how things got to this point in the first place. Isabella Gluzman was born on June 9, 1995, right there in Aurora, Colorado. Back then, she lived with her biological father, Robert Gluzman, and her mother Yunhee Hoy at a different address in the same city. The couple ran a portrait studio together at the Aurora Town Center, which they lovingly named Bella Portrait Studio after their daughter. They adored Isabella, and Isabella loved them too, especially her father, Robert. Life was happy for a while, but by 1999, things began to fall apart. Tension started to build in the marriage, and eventually the couple decided to get a divorce. That same year, Robert and Yunhee separated. Yunhee was granted custody, and Isabella went to live with her mother at a different residence in the city. Even as a child, Isabella was known to be stubborn and short-tempered. But after the divorce, her behavior worsened. She became more rebellious and irritable. Her frustration turned into anger, and that anger turned into resentment, especially when, just a year after the divorce in 2000, her mother married another man, Ryan Huey, who became Isabella's stepfather. Isabella was furious. She couldn't accept someone else taking her father's place, especially since she was still very attached to her biological dad, Robert Gluzman. That moment marked the beginning of an even deeper decline in her behavior. As she grew older, her temper only got worse. She began making expensive demands, designer clothes, costly toys, and when those demands weren't met, she would scream and fight with her mother. In an attempt to support Isabella's desires, Yunhee started taking on extra part-time jobs beyond running the studio, but she still couldn't keep up. Eventually, Isabella's behavior became so unbearable that Yunhee sent her to live with Robert. But that didn't last long. Within days, Isabella was back with her mother. Her attitude, however, remained unchanged. When Isabella turned 14, she made a major life decision. She abandoned her religion. Her parents and stepfather were all Jehovah's Witnesses, a Christian denomination that doesn't celebrate holidays like Christmas, Easter, or even birthdays. Isabella found these restrictions suffocating. She rejected the faith and started living life on her own terms. She refused to listen to her parents, stopped attending school regularly, and spent most of her time hanging out with friends. Sometimes, she would vanish for 3 or 4 days at a time without contacting anyone, not even showing up at school. Whenever her mother tried to talk to her, she would lash out. Though she was still enrolled, Isabella was barely scraping by academically. Then came a turning point when she was in 12th grade. Her attendance had dropped so low that she was expelled just 1 week before her final high school exams. This hit her mother hard. Yunhee tried everything to help Isabella, but nothing worked. The final blow came on the night of August 27, 2013, when Isabella did something she had never done before. She spat in her own mother's face. That act left Yunhee terrified, and she spent the entire night in fear, locked in her room with her husband. Somehow, the night passed, and the morning of Wednesday, August 28, 2013, arrived. As soon as Yunhee woke up, she checked her phone and discovered that Isabella had sent her an email the previous night. But when Yunhee opened the email from Isabella, she was stunned. It contained just 3 chilling words: "You will pay." The message was clear. Isabella meant that her mother would pay for everything she had done to her. This frightened Yunhee even more. She immediately showed the email to her husband, Ryan Huey, and the two of them were left feeling confused and scared about what to do next. Eventually, Yunhee decided to call the police. That same afternoon, August 28, 2013, she dialed 911. Within minutes, officers arrived at the house. Once the police got there, Yunhee explained everything: Isabella's behavior and the threatening email. However, since it was considered a domestic issue, the officers initially treated it as a family matter. They gave Isabella a formal warning, telling her that if she acted out again, her mother would be within her rights to kick her out of the house. According to U.S. law, parents are not legally required to house their children once they turn 18, and Isabella had turned 18 just 2 months earlier, in June 2013. After issuing the warning, the officers left. Isabella went back into her bedroom, while Yunhee left for work at the portrait studio located at the town center. But Yunhee still had a lingering sense of unease. Once she arrived at the studio, she decided to tell her ex-husband, Robert Gluzman, Isabella's biological father, about everything that had happened. Robert had always been very close to Isabella, and she had once felt the same love toward him. Concerned, Yunhee asked Robert if he could go over to the house and try to talk to their daughter, to help her calm down and understand the seriousness of her actions. At the time Robert arrived, Isabella was still in her bedroom. In fact, she hadn't come out at all since the police had left earlier that afternoon. When Robert got there, he gently asked her to come outside. The two of them went into the backyard, where they sat down and talked. Robert spoke to Isabella calmly, trying to get through to her. He told her that what she did was wrong, that she needed to respect her elders, listen to her parents, and stop being so stubborn. He spent nearly an hour to an hour and a half trying to make her understand. Throughout the entire conversation, Isabella didn't say a single word. She just sat there, quietly nodding along as if she was listening and agreeing. The way she was silently nodding made Robert feel hopeful. He thought maybe she was beginning to realize her mistakes. Maybe she was starting to change. But the truth was far more disturbing. Isabella wasn't truly listening. She was simply pretending to be attentive. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. It's likely she had already made up her mind about what she was going to do next. Around 6:30 p.m., Robert left the house. Not long after, Isabella returned to her bedroom. Calm on the outside, but secretly harboring something far more sinister. About 3 hours later, Isabella returned home. She had even brought dinner from McDonald's for Ryan. After arriving, Yunhee asked Ryan if he had seen Isabella. Ryan replied that he wasn't sure where she was at the moment, but he did recall seeing her in the kitchen around 8:30 p.m. After that, Yunhee headed upstairs to the first-floor bathroom to take a shower, while Ryan sat down in the living room to eat the meal Isabella had brought for him. Everything seemed normal, until just before 10 p.m., when Ryan suddenly heard a loud thudding noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like something or someone had fallen or slammed into a wall. Just moments later, Yunhee screamed his name from upstairs. Alarmed, Ryan ran toward the sound and rushed up the stairs. When he reached the first floor, he saw the bathroom door was slightly open and could hear the shower running inside. As he cautiously approached, he caught a glimpse of Isabella inside the bathroom. But just as he tried to push the door open, Isabella slammed it shut with all her strength and locked it from the inside. Suddenly, loud screams from Yunhee echoed from within the locked bathroom. Ryan began banging on the door, trying to break it down. He put all his strength into it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, he noticed something horrifying. Blood was starting to pool out from underneath the door. Panic-stricken, he ran downstairs, grabbed his phone, and dialed 911. The time was approximately 10:05 p.m. On the call, Ryan told the police that his wife and stepdaughter were locked inside the bathroom, and he feared Isabella was attacking Yunhee. While still on the call, Ryan explained everything that had happened that night and the previous day. As he was talking to the dispatcher, he rushed back upstairs, just in time to hear Yunhee scream out, "Oh God!" It was a blood-curdling cry, and it was her last. Suddenly, everything went completely silent. Moments later, the bathroom door creaked open. Isabella stepped out, wearing a pink sports bra and turquoise shorts, completely drenched in blood. Her clothes and body were stained, and in her right hand, she was gripping a blood-soaked knife that was still dripping. Ryan froze in place. He stood motionless, paralyzed by fear. He thought he might be next, but Isabella didn't even look at him. Her face was completely expressionless, cold and distant. Without saying a word, she simply walked past him, went downstairs and headed out toward the backyard. As soon as she was gone, Ryan rushed into the bathroom, and what he saw made the ground feel like it had disappeared from beneath his feet. The bathroom was covered in blood. Yunhee was lying naked on the floor. There was a deep, gaping wound on her neck, and her face and chest were covered in dozens of stab wounds. A wooden baseball bat was also lying next to her, stained with blood. Ryan, still on the phone with 911, told the operator about his wife's condition. The dispatcher instructed him to begin CPR immediately. He tried desperately to revive her, but it was no use. Yunhee lay there, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling, completely lifeless. At around 10:16 p.m., Aurora police arrived at the scene. Minutes later, medical personnel also showed up. They examined her, and at 10:28 p.m. on August 28, 2013, Yunhee Huey was officially pronounced dead. Her body was sent for an autopsy. The Aurora police immediately began searching for Isabella. They scoured the entire house but couldn't find her. Then they checked the backyard, since that was the last direction Isabella had been seen walking toward. But she was gone. The police tried to track her phone signal, but that failed too. Her phone was turned off. With no leads, the Aurora police issued a public advisory through the media, warning the public that Isabella Gluzman was armed and dangerous. They urged anyone who saw her to contact law enforcement immediately. The next morning, August 29, 2013, the autopsy report arrived. It revealed the unthinkable. Yunhee Huey had been stabbed a total of 79 times. The autopsy revealed that Yunhee Huey had been stabbed 31 times in the face and 48 times in the neck and chest with a knife. However, during court proceedings, it was later disclosed that the actual number of stab wounds was 151, including 35 wounds to the face, 51 to the neck, and the remaining 65 wounds scattered across various parts of her body. Before being stabbed, she had also been beaten with a wooden baseball bat. Once the full details of the postmortem report were released to the media, the horrific nature of the crime spread like wildfire across the United States. People were stunned and horrified that a daughter could brutally murder her own mother in such a savage manner. At that point, Isabella was still on the run, and the police had made no progress in locating her, until the same morning, around 11:30 a.m., when a mysterious anonymous call was made to 911. The caller reported a blood-covered body inside a car parked at the garage of 2851 South Parker Road. Police rushed to the scene immediately, but when they arrived at the parking garage, the car and the body were both gone. It baffled investigators. How could a dead body vanish from a car in broad daylight? While searching the vehicle thoroughly, police found evidence linking the car to both Isabella Gluzman and the murder of Yunhee Huey. Realizing that the suspect could still be in the area, officers, some in uniform, others undercover, were deployed across the vicinity. Soon after, they spotted a young woman wearing a pink sports bra walking nearby. She matched Isabella's description. To be sure, one of the undercover officers casually approached her and started a conversation. As he got a closer look, there was no doubt in his mind. It was Isabella Gluzman. He started following her discreetly. Moments later, 2 more uniformed officers joined in. When the woman walked toward a bush near the parking lot, the officers quickly surrounded her and drew their weapons. Even then, Isabella tried to mislead them. She claimed they had the wrong person. When asked to show her ID, she said the woman on the ID just happened to look like her. She told officers her name was Samantha Gonzalez and that she lived in Insanity, a vague or possibly fabricated answer. But her clothes were stained in blood, and nothing she said added up. The officers didn't buy her story. Finally, after nearly 16 hours on the run, Isabella Gluzman was arrested at 2 p.m. on August 29, 2013, just 1.5 kilometers, under a mile, from the crime scene. And the body reported inside the car? It wasn't a body at all. It had been Isabella herself, asleep in the back seat. The night she murdered her mother, Isabella had taken a car from the house and driven it to the garage at 2851 South Parker Road, just over a mile away. There, she parked the car and climbed into the back seat to sleep. Because she was covered in blood, someone who saw her sleeping mistook her for a corpse and called 911. But by the time police arrived, Isabella had slipped away into the garage and later emerged, only to be arrested. Judge George Brauchler determined that Isabella was not mentally competent at the time of the crime. Therefore, she was not sentenced to prison, but was instead ordered to undergo treatment at the Colorado Mental Health Institute. The judge ruled that Isabella would remain there indefinitely, until she no longer posed a threat to herself or to society, whether that took 1 year, 2 years, or the rest of her life. Following the court's decision, Isabella was transferred to the Mental Health Institute, where she remained for over 6 years, receiving continuous treatment. Then, in November 2020, at the age of 25, Isabella gave a rare interview to the media. In it, she shared new claims about her life, saying that she had been mistreated by her family for years. She also said that the abuse intensified after she left her religion at the age of 14. However, when those claims were later investigated, no evidence was found to support them. She reiterated in the interview that she was not in her senses when she killed her mother, but insisted that she was now completely stable, no longer a danger to herself or others. She argued that it was time for her to be released from the mental health facility. Soon after the interview aired, a 7-year-old video of Isabella in court went viral on TikTok. As often happens on that platform, people began to blindly follow a trend without understanding the full context. The video gained traction not because of the crime she committed, but because many users found her physically attractive. Shockingly, people began to sympathize with Isabella, saying she probably had a reason for killing her mother, or worse, that her mother deserved it. It was a deeply troubling example of how social media can distort public perception, and how people are sometimes quick to dismiss heinous crimes just because someone appears beautiful or innocent. In fact, the interview seemed to work in Isabella's favor. In June 2021, she was granted a conditional release from the Mental Health Institute. The condition, She had to continue attending therapy regularly and follow all mental health treatment protocols. To sum it all up, whether Isabella's crime was the result of mental illness or rage, the tragedy remains the same. What's even more disturbing is how people later tried to justify her crime without knowing the full story, simply because of her appearance. This case is a reminder that we should never judge a criminal based on their looks, wealth, or background. Our judgment must be based solely on the nature and gravity of the crime they committed. That was the full story. I hope you found this information useful and thought-provoking. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you'll find the links in the description. You can also email me your thoughts at the provided address. I'll be back soon with another story. Until then, take care, and thank you so much for watching.